Dwayne, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no, it's really glad you're here. Excited to get into everything.
Sure.
Can we start with sort of like a introduction? If we give an overview of your journey throughout life so far, sort of where you've come from and the things you've been through to get to where you are today.
Wow.
Generalized.
So, I feel my life has been one of like a journey of an imposter syndrome to semi-understanding levels of what it means to reach your kind of full potential, being able to kind of transmute, meaning getting rid of things that don't really fit with you or fit your kind of personality. And I felt like there was a lot of versions of myself that was not me, that was literally, I guess, from society, domestication at home, all of the kind of stereotypes that I put on men, especially as a black man, kind of those layers. And I feel like there's been a lot of triumphs, but I felt like they've been silent triumphs. I don't know, when you kind of worked on yourself, you get to the top of the mountain and you look around to see who's around. And there's a few people, but one thing I've realized is that the journey's really been loving, honoring, and continuing to keep striving regardless of what happens.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I relate with a lot of that. Yeah. Especially like shedding away things that aren't you.
Yeah.
Like continually finding out who you are.
Definitely a journey.
Yeah.
I'm still learning it. I haven't made it yet.
Yeah. And so, you worked in, I know you've been involved in creative sectors, education sectors, therapy sectors. Can we start with creativity? So,
yeah, sure.
What's your creative journey been like? Like, when did you start being creative, and how has that progressed?
To be honest, you know what? Creativity, I feel like, has always been a part of me, part of who I am. I don't feel like I've pushed myself and immersed myself completely into creativity properly, but I feel like from when I can remember, I've always sang, I've always danced, I've always been interested in performing arts. I think the first recollection I have of creativity and music is from primary school, like doing theatre and primary, doing plays. The first thing I actually remember doing was learning how to sing opera. So classical music was the first thing that I actually learned as a skill, and then I moved to jazz. So I was learning a lot of the modalities through music, learning how to play the piano. So I got to like grade 3, and I kind of got discouraged by my piano teacher because he said I don't have the dexterity to make it.
Damn.
So it kind of like grated on my confidence. I think my journey with creativity has really been dealing with the saboteur, because as you know, as a creative, you kind of always have this itching thing that you could do it better. And when you don't do it, you see other people doing it and it just gripes at you. So I think for me, it's just been a journey of really understanding what it takes and understanding that creativity is like a passion. It's like love. It's a journey of yourself and being vulnerable.
Yeah. Amazing. That reminded me when you said about the piano teacher. What's that movie with the drummer? Have you seen it?
Oh, Whiplash. Whiplash is an amazing movie.
I just got a flashback when you said that to that movie. Yeah. I think, creativity can be like, I don't know, I think especially when we're young, creativity can be, I don't know for lack of a better term, but beaten out of us.
Yeah, it's beaten out of you.
Very quickly, or very easily.
Yeah.
Because like as a child, you're so sensitive. And when you realize you're good at something, or maybe you want to explore something, the smallest bit of discouragement can just like completely knock it off course.
Throw you off. I could give you an example. I remember year 7, I went to all boys school and it was a talent show. And remember Artful Dodger, Craig David, Rewind? I got up on the stage, holding the mic, doing the ad-libs, and for the first time I experienced what stage fright was like. And I froze. And everyone was like, come on. And then it turned from come on to laughing. And I remember just being frozen, running off the stage, shaking. And for my first time, I kind of experienced what it felt like to have it beaten out of you. That's what it felt like for me. Got beaten out of me at that time.
For sure. What have been sort of your creative inspirations?
Ooh, there's so many.
Yeah.
I really love art that expresses self. So I love Erykah Badu, because Erykah Badu creates experiences for people. Stevie Wonder, great vocalist. Tank. I love R&B I love gospel music. I love anything that's about expression. And recently I went to the Renaissance tour because again, the artwork and concepts and vocals and just the dedication. I love seeing hard work, and seeing it on stage just reminds me of being a child. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with the music, do you plan on sort of having that in your life, or where does that fit in now?
You know what? I ask this question to myself all the time, and people always ask me, Dwain, what do you do with your music? You're so good. You're such a good songwriter. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like right now I'm learning. I feel like I've come to a place where I've accepted parts of myself, and I feel like the parts that I have accepted is a parts with the music. So I feel like there's definitely a lot of work to be done, and I'm still doing music. I'm still doing it without people knowing. I'm still writing in my spare time. I'm still playing the piano. I am working on a project, but I don't like pressure, so I don't tell people. So I just keep it to myself. But yeah, I'm working on a project, and I've got a few people that are friends in the music industry that are trying to really push me and really support me. So I love that because I've never felt support like that before. So hopefully I'll say I'm going to give myself a year to structure everything properly and hopefully release like an EP.
Nice.
Yeah, so an introduction to me, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I guess sometimes, I mean, cause especially when you have different like avenues in your life going on at the same time, you can't rush things either. Like sometimes maybe the time isn't right for one thing at this time. That doesn't mean it's going to be out of your life completely. So
I feel like when you're a creative, it never leaves you.
Exactly.
It doesn't go. It's like a child. That inner child always reminds you, like, do it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's always there. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn something in art, you never forget. Once you learn how to draw, you never forget how to draw. It's always in you.
Yeah. Unless you like convince yourself that you, like it stopped or something. I feel like people get into these illusions. If you like believe in an illusion strongly enough, you know, it will shape your behavior.
Yeah.
Like
I definitely went through phases where I said I didn't believe I could sing. Because people actually told me that I couldn't sing, and I believed it. And actually, when you believe the opinions of others outside of yourself, that's where the harm comes in.
Sure.
Where's the self-love? Where is the acceptance? Where is you understanding your journey? You understanding that it's a process to get to whatever your goal is.
Yeah, definitely. Facts. Okay, so let's move on to education. So yeah, you've done some work in the education sector. First question is, what has your involvement been in the education sector?
So essentially, when my background is actually business management. I finished uni and I was working in retail as a manager, and it just became a mundane thing. Like people kept coming in and saying, "You're so smart, you're so intelligent. What are you doing here?" And I was like, you get comfortable in your kind of routine. What ended up happening was that this woman kept coming and saying, "Why do you work with young people? Like, why do you work with young people?" And I never really thought about working with young people. But if I'll be honest, in 2013, I remember having a dream about actually working in education and working in therapy. And it was funny because there were like 3 different floors. The first floor was law. I love law. That was my goal, to get into business law. But then it didn't quite work out because when I started doing experience around that, it just wasn't for me. And then the second floor was science. And I needed, my science GCSE to do psychology. But because we didn't have a science teacher in year 11, we had a PE teacher. A lot of people didn't get the grades that they wanted. So then I couldn't go down the route of psychology. So I chose another alternative route. So getting into education, what ended up happening is that I just took a risk and left my full-time job and started working for a youth organization. And that job was only for 3 weeks. It was only a 3-week summer job. Why would I leave a full-time paying job at that time?
As a leap of faith of sorts, yeah.
Yeah, a leap of faith, a risk, opportunity. Now, what ended up happening is that they said, "Dwain, like, you're so great at what you're doing. Can you come back?" And then they kept inviting me back. So my work was extending. But during that time after summer, I became an education specialist. So I worked with young people off-site that aren't allowed to be in school, that are in alternative provisions. And from there, I then moved on to be a teaching assistant. And again, I started seeing the ceiling. And I'm like, nah, there's more that needs to be done here. So I went to the head teacher and I was like, we need behavior management. We need like proper interventions for young people. And the borough that I was working in is predominantly black. So what I was seeing is a lot of young men coming in with anger problems, you know, single parents, not really understanding who they are. a lot of violence, a lot of poverty. And I started putting little interventions in place for them. So I worked in that position for 3 years, and then I moved into mainstream, being a behavior manager for like 1,400 plus young people.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow, man, that's inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
No, it's really cool that you just like left your job before and then just went into this whole different path and went quite far actually and started making changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've been fairly involved in it, I would say, like quite in the depths of it. What would you say are, so like in the UK education system right now, what would you say are some things that are done well and some things that are done badly?
I feel like the things that are done well, actually, let me start with badly, just because like I have a lot of gripes to the education system.
Yeah.
And I still work with the education system, so I'm going to be careful how I put it. But I feel like, the things that are done well is, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for young people to progress into educational settings. Schools kind of make sure that young people are, academic. The things that ain't done too well, I feel they put a lot of pressure on young people to be, I know it's going to sound like a juxtaposition, academic.
Mm-hmm.
Not every young person is academic.
Sure.
A lot of young people are kinetic learners. A lot of young people are different type of learners. Creative. And often within the education system, it doesn't always make room for creativity. And it's quite rigid. I think another thing that's not done so well is exclusions. So when young people exhibit bad behavior, they're excluded. And what a lot of the teaching staff don't understand is that when you exclude a young person, you're removing them from the protective factor, which is the school, and where they can be seen. So when they're in these alternative provisions or people referral units, or a better term, they're not getting the same access to education like everybody else. It's like a holding system. And then that's how they become part of the system. And young people are very frustrated about that.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to think about. So what were some of the interventions that you incorporated? What were the interventions?
So a lot of it was about self-esteem, confidence, identity, knowing thyself. A lot of it was around managing safety on the road, family dynamics, how to manage your finances. Because in schools, they don't teach young people that. They don't teach them how to save. They don't teach them about buying houses or having financial literacy. Everything is academic, university, but they don't teach them real life skills that they can implement. You find out a lot of these roadmen, they're smart. They know about the roads. They know how to make money. They know how to stay safe relatively. But imagine if they applied that in the legal world, if they were given the steps, they will be millionaires and billionaires if they were given the right opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a shame of sorts. Like when you see people, like there's so many people that just like, where the education system has failed them.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. And we call that in the system extrafamilial harm, is when professionals can be responsible for harm that is caused for a young person. A lot of the time you have a lot of these teachers that come from outer London that don't understand young people that are inner London. And it's almost like what you said, stamping out the creativity, but they stamp out the identity of that young person. They want these young people to be silent, complicit. When young people today are young adults and they have so much, their throat chakra is activated. They say how they feel. And I think the education system really needs to listen from that peer voice.
Yeah. It's got so much maturity to the education system.
It's like 20 years behind.
At least.
10 years behind at least.
Yeah. It's been one thing that for me, like, also has been just a section of my life that I have so many qualms with education. I mean,
tell me about some of your qualms.
Yeah, I mean, so my first batch of education was in Iran, where I grew up. So that's from kindergarten to 11 years old when I left. So that was in Iran. Again, all academical. And it sort of makes sense when they say the current school system was made to make factory workers. And it just hasn't really been that updated since then, the way it works. But it was very much Iran has a strong focus on academics and people being smart. And some of the world's smartest people are Iranian. They'll work at NASA and just super technical stuff, like theoretical physics, mathematics, all of that. But at the same time, it just is missing a huge dimension of soul and creativity, and just like the actual like heart dimension of the world. It's all just like
The human
mechanical.
aspect.
Yeah, it's super dehumanized. So yeah, I never really liked school, like in Iran and in the UK. Not just because of I think the way things are taught can be very dry. Because a lot of the time the teachers themselves aren't passionate about teaching. Like maybe they would rather do something else. They couldn't, and they have to teach. And they don't actually like children. It's just like they've been forced into that role. So that's not a good dynamic anyway, to start with. Not at all. Because like teachers should be, and also I think teachers should be way more paid, because it is like it's one of the most important jobs in the world. Like you're setting a kid up for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
If you mess that up, the kid's gonna be messed up for the rest of their life.
But this is what happens. And actually I feel like teaching, support needs to be paid more, because they are the backbone to what the teachers offer. It's the support staff that manage the needs of the young people from the heart space, but they're often not seen. And in these support roles, often they are black people in these roles. And when you look at the hierarchy, you don't see black people at CEO level or senior management, SLT, senior leadership team levels. I mean, I managed to get to senior leadership team level because something about wanting to impact the system, not change it, impact it, was close to my heart at the time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Talk about creativity in the education system. How do you think creativity could be taught better or encouraged better?
I think there is creativity in the system, but I don't think it's channeled to everyone. I thought, like, from my experience, it's often given to young people as interventions to get them to behave, or as a kind of distraction to ground them away from activities that aren't favorable, that causes them to be in harm. But I think, just like Germany, where young people get to like year 9, they can choose what kind of trade they should go into. I think there needs more options for like performing arts, singing. There's a lot of young people that have so much energy. But imagine if you had a program like a John Biega program, which would taught young people how to act. Young people would engage with it because it's John Biega and he's from Peckham, and they may be from Peckham and they may relate to it. But imagine if they had summer programs that taught you how to be like Michaela Cole, like all of these people now that are influential. I believe it will open the door for young people to see that there's other opportunities outside rapping and football. Because there's the two things that young people want to be: is a rapper, a footballer. Those are the two things that always come up for me anyway.
Yeah. No, I think it's like, as you described it, like if you could have a more personalized approach to it. So like people that have already made it in a certain path, they just provide education. Well, of course, if they want to. But I think that would probably work better than just like the average teacher who doesn't have interest or like deep interest in something.
Or you'd have to get into like a specialist school, like, I don't know, Sylvia Young performing arts school. You'll have to get into someone in Croydon, the Brits school, in order to progress on a life. Or what if you taught young people a lot more younger, and you taught young people about failure? They don't teach young people about what happens when you fail.
Yeah.
How do you catch yourself? How do you hold yourself? How do you not be discouraged?
So many things they don't teach young people.
They don't.
Like relationships. No one ever talked to me about relationships in school. How to handle relationships, how to like handle your patterns. What even are patterns?
I got taught a little bit. The only reason I got taught a little bit, I'll be honest, I was one of those young people that had a lot of issues at home, and I came into school angry, and I used to be one of those young people that will throw a chair, throw a table, flip a table, and then I ended up getting this mentor called Colin, and I remember he was like 6'3" in the army, and I remember him coming into my maths classroom. I remember double period. It's so vivid in my mind. Him bending down because he's so tall, and he's like, "Yeah, who's Dwain?" And everyone's pointing and laughing at us at school. And he's like, "Come here, I want to talk to you." And I'm like, "No, me manager, no, I'm not leaving." So he waited at the back of the classroom for the lesson to finish. And when I tried to get up and go, he walked towards the door. He's like, "You're going nowhere. You're not going nowhere." And it was someone like him that taught me a lot about how to manage my anger, even though I still dealt with anger issues after that. But it wasn't as bad. It was a lot more contained. A lot more young people need people that they can just be real with.
Mm. So was he very direct? It sounds like he was a very direct person.
He was very direct, and he didn't BS. He just said it as it is. He's like, "You're going to continue. You're going to end up in prison. You keep punching people and kicking people and using your weight against people. You're going to end up behind bars, or you're going to end up dead." It's gave me two realities. He's like, "You're smart. You're intelligent. Use that."
Yeah.
He used to say, "Work hard, play later." And then when I got to like year 11, because I did for 2 years, he was like, "No, work smart, play later." And it wasn't until, I guess, university I began to understand what he meant by that. Working smarter, not working harder.
Yeah.
Doing more hours doesn't necessarily bring you along further. It's about you willing inside yourself that you're going to work smarter to achieve your goal, regardless of what the obstacles are.
Mm-hmm. That's cool that like that sort of direct approach obviously helped you a lot. Because I'm just thinking it might not work for everyone. That sort of approach. Some people might just like shy away into their shell too much.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what would happen. Like, but I think maybe it's important as well to have personalized approaches to different students.
Trust.
Like
a lot of young people that I trust. So a lot of young people, when I start working with them, they find it difficult to open up because they've never had anyone, what they call, hold space for them and say, "I'm not going to judge you. I'm here to just listen. I'm here to empathize with you." And it's a process, but the funny thing, I've been doing this job for 5 years as a senior practitioner and a youth manager in a hospital, and seeing just how easy it is to actually build trust when you have the right heart for the job. It comes easy.
The right heart for the job. So what do you mean?
Having the right heart for the job, meaning having empathy, being able to sit with someone else's feelings, or as a better term, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And we live in a society that doesn't really pride itself in empathy. Everything is kind of non-emotional, non-attaching, or lack of intention is a better word. And being able to sit with someone in their emotion means that you're using a term called unconditional positive regard, which is, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to put you down. I'm not going to tell you what I think is best for you, but I just want to hear how you feel and relate to it.
Yeah. Nice. While we're still on topic of education, before we finish, one positive thing I just remembered about education system that I did like was when I studied in America, for university. I did exchange year. Yeah. So the university system in the UK I also didn't like, because it was like you decide something, you decide on a course, and then you're just in it for the next 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And you can't really change. That's it. Like you're in that course now. And the problem is a lot of people, like, cause you choose vertical university 17, 18.
Yeah.
And at that age, I feel like most people don't have that much self-awareness, self-knowledge of what they're actually passionate about or what they want to do with the world, with themselves. I didn't.
More than that.
Yeah. It's like and also university, for me, it was like almost too encouraged, like by the people in my A levels, like the head teachers or whatever. It was like, you have to go, you have to choose something. There wasn't
no alternative
or like any gap left for like reflection. It was like, you're finishing A levels, you gotta go to uni, where you're gonna pick.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's so much pressure and rushing of like, I gotta do something. And a lot of people just choose university degrees for that. One thing I did like about the American university system, which I didn't know until I got there, is that they have the majors and minors system.
Yeah.
So like you can choose a major and you can also choose a minor. So you can choose a major in engineering and you can choose a minor in philosophy, completely unrelated. Yeah. And you can do both. And also you can change them pretty much like in the first 2 years, I think.
Yeah, after semesters.
Yeah, you can, like I met people that changed majors 3 times.
Wow.
And now they're in the 3rd year or whatever. And it's like, in the UK, that's not possible. Like, you can change your degree.
To start again.
You have to start again.
Yeah.
Drop out or whatever. So that's one thing I did like about the American system. The majors and minors and that, the fact that you could change them. It was very flexible and like, allows for further exploration of what you actually are interested in. So yeah, just thought I'd say that.
No, I think that's interesting, because I was always trying to get my ass to America, but my mum would not sign that paper for me to go. So I was like, I tried after I finished school, I tried in college, and then I got to university. I was like, should I do a sandwich year? And I got to a point where I was like, actually, you know what? I'm just going to go live in America. And then after going a few times, I was like, yeah, glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I got some holiday.
It's a complicated place.
It's very complicated.
It is. Okay, cool. So young people, obviously you work with youth, and that's been a big part of your journey.
Yeah.
Men cause a lot of problems in the world. I think it's like a blanket statement, but
Yeah.
they do. But I think a lot of times that comes from their own education system, their own upbringing, their own society, programming, all sorts of stuff. But it ends up in a destructive force because they have so much, like it's like that masculine force. If it's destructive, it can be very destructive.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are some of the biggest problems facing young men today?
I think men in general find being vulnerable difficult. Speaking from being introspective, they find it really hard to just say how they feel. There's this stigma that as men we're not allowed to have a soft life. We can't do soft life. We can't travel. We can't post on the beach with a sangria. Can't do that because we're supposed to be building a house or doing something which society says we should do, or getting a massage for well-being. We can't do that either. Like this, we can, but society puts all of these things in place that makes it difficult. But yeah, vulnerability, I think how we view the opposite sex is quite dangerous now because we have so much exposure with sex, and with that it's created, especially lockdown, it created this non-attachment. So I did a lot of research and found out that a lot of men obviously couldn't access women, so they spent a lot of time on porn, which means that their communication and social skills went out the window. So now we just have a lot of stimulus, put a better term, and not a lot of real connections. So you hear a lot of people talking about situationships, men are trash, men are dogs, but at the same time, a lot of these men are not raised to be accountable. They're not raised to be outstanding, to protect. Not saying all men, by the way. This is the nuances.
Of course.
The sort of target of men that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I also feel there's just this coldness, and I experienced this today with one of the young men that I was kind of working with. And he said to me, listen, fam, men are here to talk about my feelings. I don't talk about my feelings, so just leave that. We're not going to talk about my feelings. That's my business. I'm going to deal with that. And that's what it is, pride. Pride is a big thing.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
And I'm singing from my own hymn sheet. My pride, I even stop myself sometimes and I have to check myself when I'm going through something, and I will say, oh, no one cares about me. No one's there. But then have I picked up the phone to call anyone? Have I tried to? I've already put inside all of these, I guess, hypotheticals at what people are going to say and do. And then there's this other side of it where as men, we like solutions. We're very solution focused. Yeah. It doesn't allow us or give us time to process.
Yeah. I mean, the vulnerability aspect, I mean, I feel like it's all connected, like, to each other, but like I feel like that's even connected to the pride and like the societal programming, because as you said, like maybe it's not cool to talk about like as a man going to get a massage or relaxing
or pedicure or manicure.
Yeah.
Ooh,
right.
That's a problem. Can't do that.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, I don't know, that's a big question, but like, why is the societal programming or just like perception so rigid around men's vulnerability?
There's many different nuances to it, so many different branches. I think you could look at culture, like in all different cultures, there's this reigning thing which men have to be the leader. And a part of me actually believes a man should be a leader. I believe that like men should lead. Not say that women shouldn't lead. I think when you're in a loving, intentional relationship, both partners can lead, but essentially it's still the man that is leading. But I feel the fact that a lot of men feel they can't voice how they feel without there being a repercussion. Because the other side of it is you have a lot of women talking about how men feel, and I always feel that that can be quite destructive. Why are there not spaces, the same spaces that women have, to be able to speak about how they feel? And I looked at it as someone that's training to be a therapist as the only space that a man might have to talk about how they feel, maybe the barbershop. But even then, it's not really how you feel. It's how's your week been? You cool? Oh yeah, what girl are you talking to? And it's all very superficial. It's never anything deep. And I started challenging it. Like I've been going to my barber for how many years? I never asked me, how are you? How are you? And I remember asking my barber that one time and he turned off the clipper because why you ask me them things for? You coming here to cut your hair, you coming here for therapy session. And in my mind, I was just like, I'm here to have a conversation and be intentional to find out. Like, but then I realized again, it's difficult when as women are there for nurture. And again, are women there for nurture and are men there for nurture? I believe women are there for nurture because it's natural for women to nurture, but actually it's also natural for a man to balance his masculine and feminine energy to be able to heal himself and not expect a woman to heal. And this is why women have so much gripes, is because often men align themselves with women that are going to be able to be conduits for what they're going through without realizing that they're lacking accountability. Does that make sense? By doing that.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's something very loaded, with all different opinions about it.
Sure.
But I think actually someone's experience with, a man that has ill-treated them is valid, but also let's look at it from the man's, frame of reference. What has that man dealt with? How is that man raised? How did that man see love? How does that man view love? How does that man view himself?
Yeah, exactly. And like, I see those things everywhere now. Like once you see them, like once you see you get an insight into like the pain that goes behind a destructive person, an externally destructive person, a violent person. You can, like, I can see it now in people's eyes. Like when I can see the pain instead of the outward destruction.
Yeah. That's awareness.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, how many like missed opportunities have there been for that man, where they couldn't, express themselves the way they wanted to, or they didn't get the support they needed. They just weren't held in a particular way, or they weren't taught how to hold themselves. All of that.
There's so many different things. Like imagine you growing up with your dad not being around and your mum is always saying to you, you're just like your father. You never met this man, but you're being told that you're always like this man. And you're almost living out a legacy that you don't know. So it's almost like torture because you're being told about characteristics that you're not even fully aware of. And now that's been projected onto you. And guess what happens? The cycle repeats itself. The other side of it as well, you've got a lot of, let's say, call it out, a lot of platforms on social media, which women call, what is it? Mansplaining, like a lot of mansplaining.
Yeah.
I don't typically go into those TikToks or IGs, the Andrew Tates and the Fit For, and rest in peace Kevin Samuel. All of those kind of think spaces are quite negative, and although sometimes you can draw positivity from, they might be able to say one or two things. The overall thing of what they're saying isn't uniting a man to be his highest form.
Yeah. It might be pointing at the truth in some way, but it usually doesn't. Like, I don't know, it's hard to find like a holistic.
Yeah. There's truth and then there's radical truth, isn't there? Yeah. There's a radical truth where I can sit and tell you as a bro, listen, X, Y, Z, and then there's truth that's like subjective. And I feel a lot of the stuff that we're seeing on social media about men and women are subjective things. And there are also things that belong in echo chambers.
Yeah.
For people that are constantly going back to things that they know harm them. And that's self-sabotaging. That's not putting yourself first. That's not loving yourself. And I think if you're, like you said earlier, patterns of relating, that stems back to childhood as well.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. No, vulnerability is a big one. I've started, it's been a few years now, but I don't know when I had like the flip change for me where I basically stopped caring about the perception of it. I think I actually started with starting my creative journey, because that was something, it was like a different thing that I had done. And especially, I guess, once I started posting it and telling people about it, people's perception of me changed. And I had to like, and it's still going on today, this thing, but like, with each new piece that I post or, each new venture, it's got to this point now where I really have to let go of, how it's perceived, because it's too much. Like, it's like there's so many things and it could be perceived in infinite ways. And it's just too much. Like, I have to let it go.
So I'm learning about that too. It's hard because there's one voice I have in my head that always comes back, and I think we've always got that one saboteur in our head that likes to come back. But I was reading something online. It's like actually calling out your monster and shrinking it in the palm of your hand and telling it that it has no power over you.
Yeah.
Visualization stuff. It's like I think can work for some people.
Yeah,
if you're
sure.
aware and you're tapped into yourself in that way.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like I've been sort of challenging it too in public situations. So like trying to take conversations sometimes to deeper levels. I guess there's always a time and place where you can't be like that guy that's always trying to like make everything philosophical at a party or whatever. But
I've had to learn that. I've had to learn that. Yeah, like this is fun time, not deep time. Yeah.
Like you learn after so many awkward encounters. Like maybe this wasn't the time for me. But still, like I feel like so many conversations have space to go deeper. And sometimes people, I don't know, you can notice like glimmers of a cry for help throughout the conversation. Yeah. Someone would just say a passing comment and then we'll go back to like laughing or whatever. But if you're aware enough, you can see like the depth of pain behind that passive comment.
That happened to me at a party, and it was really deep because obviously we were just talking and they started basically listing symptoms of a mental health illness. And the individual kept laughing off, and I was really concerned. And the worst thing about it was that I was lit. And you know when you're lit, you're like, do I really hear this, or am I really feeling this? And I had to pull this individual outside the party to talk to them and say, please go to your GP. I'm really concerned about what you said. And the individual came back to me like 2 weeks later after breaking down because they were upset after that I, had brought something to them which they were aware of. It wasn't anything new, they were aware of it, but they didn't realize that they had projected it into that space. And I think, like you said, sometimes people say things and they go, haha, or we move. And often people don't realize that we move is actually a way of saying, I don't want to sit with this. I feel uncomfortable. Let's move on.
Just like push it down.
Yeah, push it down.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's a good practice to like encourage vulnerability, and obviously within your own expression, but then also if it's in a conversational setting or relational setting, sort of.
It's hard though, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So like even for me, I'm finding it hard because every time I post something that's thought provoking, everyone says, "Why are you shouting?" Or I get silence, which I realize silence is not actually a bad thing. But I realized I saw a quote yesterday that really helped me out, and it was like, loneliness / solitude can be a great state of mind. However, it can be a very lonely place for people that are trying to elevate and grow. And I realized since I have gone into elevating and getting rid of certain behaviors and mindsets, it's been very lonely. And I think that's why a lot of people don't go on a journey. They don't look at themselves because they're afraid that they're going to lose what makes them who they are. But little do they know that's not really who they are. Sure. It's when you remove yourself from people. I'm not saying isolate yourself. Never do that. I'm saying when you remove yourself from certain vibrations that don't benefit you, you begin to really see who you are and what you bring to the world.
Yeah. And I mean, the loneliness thing, I can definitely see it. And you see it in many of the greats.
Yeah.
Cause it's like choosing your own authentic, which is often vulnerable path, and then committing to it and sharing it. That often goes down but it's just not everyone can relate with that. That's the thing, and it's quite a natural thing because like just not everyone can relate with that, unfortunately. But yeah,
you meet people as deep as they met themselves.
Right, exactly. One thing I have noticed though is that I also get a lot of silence, and then there is a loneliness with the vulnerability. But one thing that I have noticed is like even if it doesn't, because I think for a lot of people like vulnerability and expressions of vulnerability, it's just not cool.
Yeah,
like it's just not cool, and
yeah,
and they'll rather have cool stuff, especially with Instagram, TikTok, all that, the reels. It's all like funny, cool stuff that like trends. There's obviously niches for like the more serious stuff, but the stuff that makes it to the right at the top is the entertainment stuff.
It's all kind of like, I guess, what we call vain, kind of like things that don't provide too much thought. Like on holiday, a great body, alcohol,
entertainment of sorts.
Different, materialistic stuff, shopping. It's never.
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on how you create your social media, because I've done that recently. I've literally looked at the things I was liking and I've gone through and changed it, and now my popular page doesn't even have anything, which is things I used to call like the echo chambers.
Yeah. Oh no, I was gonna say one thing I have noticed with it is that even though for a lot of people it might not hit straight away, or they might not say anything. It might still, a lot of times, it still strikes some chord within a person, and maybe the person will have like pushed their own vulnerability down so much that when they see it, they don't want to relate with it. They don't even want to look at it. But they will know that, oh, actually, that person is being vulnerable. Some part of them sort of knows that that's a possibility and that person is like a conduit for it. And I've noticed, even though a lot of times straight away it doesn't spark any reaction, sometimes way later when I'm like talking to a person, they will randomly say like a comment of like how deeply like my art or something has been impacting them, or how something has inspired them to go a different direction.
Yeah.
But they never told me that until like a year or years later or months later.
I'm smiling because I relate.
Right?
This happened to me recently where I've gone to certain events. People be like, I recognize you. I recognize your voice. Oh, your TikToks are so dope. And they're saying all of these great things about it. But then you go to the TikTok or the comments and you're like, oh,
nothing there.
Nothing there. But then I realize again, that goes back to the attention span of people.
Sure.
And I feel, as much as we don't like to admit it, there is a popularity thing that happens on TikTok where people do select, oh, I didn't see an algorithm, but they seem to know the information. So you did see it. But I think it's one thing I've learned for me is removing the external validation element. Being vulnerable, I could say that's one thing that I wanted. I wanted validation from people. I want people to tell me that I was great. I want people to tell me that I was doing the right thing, because sometimes you don't feel like you're doing the right thing. But again, it's about knowing who you are and knowing your why, but then also being able to sit with uncomfortability. That's one thing I've learned to do, is actually, the fact of the matter is people are coming up to me in real life and telling me it's impacted them. That means I'm doing something.
Definitely.
And it might be one person or three. I don't need 10,000 people coming up to me, because I'll probably scream and run away. You know what I mean?
And even those 3 people, like if you just like the ripple effects, if the person changes something in their life that makes them more productive, more positive, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the way they impact the people around them, it just goes on forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also those are the people that still had the courage, I don't know if the courage is the right word, but to say to you that, hey, your work impacted me. Another thing that I like, because before I started posting my stuff years ago, I used to be like a lurker on social media, and just like just scrolling and like reading stuff and actually really enjoying some content, but never liking, never commenting, never doing nothing, because like I just wasn't the kind of person that did that. And nowadays I'm like sort of the opposite. I have to remind myself recently that like there's loads of lurkers in the world. So not it's not like your audience isn't just the people that you see that react to you. Sometimes people are watching and are being impacted massively.
Yeah.
They're not saying anything about it.
Yeah.
So it's like
there's that side of the coin too.
Yeah.
And I think just always remember that when something comes to you, it's for you. is for you to understand why has it come to you, why would you want to share it, and why do you want to share it? And that's what I ask myself. I look at the impact and I'm like, I want to share this post. I want to talk about this because it's come from the ether. It's come from a place that I didn't know existed in me. And I've just had to learn to just be very patient with myself. Because sometimes we're just human and we judge based on how we see, perceive and see others act around us. But the biggest thing is just doing it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Like sometimes what I used to do is I'll post and turn my phone over. I won't want to see who's liked it. But then one thing I had to learn was, no, do you care about this post? I do. So my notifications will be on. I'm not afraid of how many likes or whatever I get on my TikTok. I'm just like, I look at the insights and I can see I may get 50 likes, but 4,000 people seen it.
Yeah.
Out of those 4,000 people, how do I know who's been impacted by that?
Yeah.
Actually, I believe they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, again, that goes back to the sort of like the letting go of there's this line from, I haven't read the Bhagavad Gita. I haven't read it, but I've just heard this line so many times. It's like, be concerned with the action, but not the fruits of the action.
Ooh.
I think
concerned with the action, but not the fruit of the action.
I might be paraphrasing. I might have got the first part slightly wrong, but the second part is definitely right. It's like, I'm not with the fruits of the action.
But you can't control that anyway, because it's external.
You can't.
To you.
Yeah. And the more like like that's just a reminder that I have to have for myself so many times, because if you're concerned with the fruit, I don't know, then it's just it can come from a place of desperation at its extreme.
And performance,
yeah. And ultimately, it might just drive you insane. It's like thinking about all the there's infinite ways like things can be perceived. And if you're like constantly thinking about all of it, I think it's probably better to just let it go and like focus on your own authentic expression and just like giving that to the world. What you want to do with that is your business. Like, I'm going to do my business.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly that. Trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. Vulnerability. Yeah.
Vulnerability is like, listen, there was a time when I experienced vulnerability for the real first time in 2018, 19. I got diagnosed with testicular cancer. And whilst that diagnosis was happening, I was also going through a divorce. So, and I was going through friendship breakups, as you do when you get divorced. And I was there, very vulnerable, bearing my soul to friends who had never actually heard a black man exchange with them how they feel fear for their health. So then I was in a very precarious situation. I was like, I've got friends, but they can't support me. I turned to social media and I remember doing a video saying, black men don't talk about when they're sick. How do black men relate to each other when they're in this scenario? Mm-hmm. And I lost a lot of friends because of it, because I realized actually people that were my friends at the time, when I look back, they didn't have the know-how. And perhaps it could have been a bit harsh, but for me, it was like when people are making jokes about you having to remove one of your testicles, are you not now being equal to them because they got two and you got one? It messed me up. It caused so much confusion, and at the time, I couldn't communicate that with people because, again, as a man, you have to be. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm at a loss. The person that I was building my life with, I'm no longer building my life with this person. And everyone's like, yeah, but just move on. And I'm like, no, I'm broken, and that's what led me into holding spaces for people and wanting to become a therapist. Was tapping into that vulnerability because I was in a dark place. I was diagnosed with psychosomatic depression, which is the diagnosis that you get when you hear the diagnosis and you start manifesting some of those symptoms. And it was a hard time because, again, my mom, my dad, my brothers, my friends, although they wanted to love me and protect me and support me, I didn't know how to be vulnerable and let them in. I've never been in a situation where I've had to be that vulnerable and say, I need help, I can't think, I can't sleep. I couldn't even eat. That's how, it was a lot of different things going on for me. You know what I mean? Yeah, tough time.
Yeah. Man, I applaud you for like keeping your vulnerability and authenticity through all that, and like still like pushing forward.
Thank you. It's
really
maybe who I am today.
Yeah.
Maybe who I am today. And I think a lot of people need to know that don't ever feel like you're by yourself. Because, bro, when I shared this on Twitter, I tell you no lie, the video that I posted, it got 5,000 views, it went to nearly a million. And people were DMing me, remember DMing me saying, oh, I've been diagnosed with testicular cancer. And I was there like late at night, talking to Americans, talking to people all over the world in my DM about my experience and what to do. There were people that found out too late that they ended up developing testicular cancer on both testicles so they can have children. That's the other element that people don't realize, that I got told that I might not be able to have kids. But people are like, oh, don't worry about it, you still got your life. F that, I want to have kids. And I want to have them naturally, and I can. Thank God. I've got it all clear, by the way. And, you know, everything's good with me and everything's back to how it should be. But it's like, people just need to know you're never alone. There's always someone that has dealt with similar things that you may be going through. Yeah. So reach out to people, speak out. Yeah. They don't have to be your friends, but Google is there. TikTok is there. There's so much information in this world now. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just want to plug that real quick.
For sure, man. No, and that again, I think to me that shows like the power of communicating your vulnerable experiences. Because even though like for many people, as you said, like with your like a lot of people that couldn't handle it in some way or another, as a lot of people want to be able to, but on the other side, there's also tons of people that will at some point in their life, might not be right now, might be someone searching in 10 years and they find your content and they're like, damn, like I really need this. And it's like, how many times like I've even experienced that with like some Googling some random question about like some super niche question and I find a Yahoo answer from 10 years ago. Yeah. And this guy just knows exactly what I'm going through.
Yeah, already. Yeah. Like but I trust you. There's times I go into blogs, I look for something and I'm like, 15 years ago, and I'm like, wow, it's got one like, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it worked for me at the time. Maybe the universe was just, it brought the right search at the right time, and it led me to the right exact thing. But that's what happens sometimes when you set, the intention is set to get the information that will come to you.
And it's like, bless that person that expressed that, because now that's helped me however many years later. But if they hadn't expressed however horrible their situation was, I would have a bit less support of like navigating my horrible situation.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there are so many horrible situations in the world. Like, and there's people going through all sorts of stuff that like we just don't hear about because they don't post about it or they don't like really share it. So again, just like, I think like communicating your vulnerability can be so helpful for people all around the world, but you might not know the effect of that straight away.
The impact.
The impact,
Very true, that.
Yeah. No, I'm loving this conversation.
It's dope. It's dope.
Yeah. Really valuable stuff. I think it's just like, it's a blockage in the culture. Like, it's communicating hard things to talk about. It's also so important to talk about. And a lot of people have hard things that they can talk about. So like, if only like we were to be a bit more flexible when someone does bring up a hard thing, like not shy away as much, like try and open some space and see what they're saying. That's a force of good in the world. Like that's sort of talking about
that should be the pinnacle of all friendships, is how do you hold space for your friends? Because a lot of people that we call friends are people that we should be calling associates. Because actually sometimes we align with people. I might align with you because you're artists and I like to draw in my spare time, but doesn't mean that you're my friend. Not necessarily.
Sure.
And I think we put people into categories that they shouldn't be in sometimes. And I'm the biggest person that will put up both of my hands first. Say, I have put so many positions in my life from people that they did not deserve to be in. And it's not until I'm going through the stuff that then I realize who's really there for me and who's not. When a friend can't even ask you, how are you, bro? How's your family? What are you eating today? How's your mental health? When's the last time someone asked you how was your mental health? Do you know what I mean? How's things with you? And that tells you who are your true, authentic I call tribe. Use your tribe. Because there's so much people in this world that have so many different mindsets and different frequencies. You have to really align, not match, align with people that match your frequency.
Yeah.
But yeah, ask real questions. How's your mental health? And the thing is that most time people listen and be like, yeah, I hear that, bro. That sounds deep still. But the person just said, I don't have money in my account and you got £10 that you give them. You're not going to be practical with your giving, practical with your love. And I just feel maybe for me, my upbringing, my morals are very Christian, even though I wouldn't call myself that. But my moral code is very Christian because of what I've been domesticated from in the family home. And there's a lot of things I still do to this day, which I don't want to get rid of because I think they're good pinnacles of being a good human being, you know? But like, just being practical with your brethren, like, bro, I'm here for you. Not even if you need me, because that puts pressure on the person to show up when that person might not have the capacity to show up. But bro, I'm here. I'm going to call you tomorrow to check in with you just to, I know you had this difficult conversation. I'm going to check in 10 minutes tomorrow. I'm going to text you tomorrow. You then know that you got a support system.
Yeah, definitely. And it might take a bit of courage, but I think just like, it's worth it. And I applaud anyone that's taking that courage and using that courage to like extend vulnerability to someone.
Yeah.
Even it could be as simple as like in a conversation with friend or friends, just asking that a little bit deeper question about how are you really, or like how is your mental health, or how is whatever, as opposed to just like the very surface level stuff. It can take a bit of courage depending on like the circles you're with and or just like the state of mind you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But that courage is worth it.
Yeah, it is. It is. I believe that when you set an intention, like one thing I've learned with my friends, my close-knit friends, is me being honest first, allow them to be honest. And when I was open up to my friends about how I felt just having to entertain a new life outside of being a husband, for the first time they got it. Because again, I'm around people that not everybody has had experience of commitment. They've only been in 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years, but never a really real serious relationship. So then I'm around all these people having this heightened experience and then expecting them to show up and hold space. No, what I needed to do was align with somebody who had been there already. But again, as young, we're not taught to really go to our elders or people in the community that we know that can support us and help us. Because again, community now has been broken down, again, crushed. I don't really sense community like how I used to growing up, you know, or village rather.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of village mentality.
I'm sure social media plays a big part in that.
Yeah.
Community.
Yeah.
Like, it's changed everything around the world because the community is now, the internet, a lot of people's communities are like, yeah. And it's just like spread out, and so it's atomized almost, but also very communal. It's a weird sense of community that we're having these days, I think.
Well, Clubhouse taught me that. So like being on, you know, when Clubhouse came out and everyone had to get invite to be on there.
Yeah.
I was on Clubhouse in the beginning when you had to have an invite to get on there. And what I saw happen was really great conversations, really great communities being built, but then people then took parts of Instagram, Twitter, and then I can be a different version of myself by my voice now.
Yeah.
So you're now getting people projecting their ideal self into Clubhouse, and then when you meet them in real life, you're like, wow, like, who's this person that was talking? Because it ain't you. But again, this is what happens when you develop all of these different kind of social media apps. The whole point of it isn't to build connection. Actually, that's a lie. Social media is about connection, but I feel like the whole point of it isn't to build real intentional frequencies about the individuals themselves that actually do that. Align and be like, yeah, cool. Like most of my friends I met online, funny enough, like the ones that I'm pretty close with, because I feel I was really trying to look outside of my area and outside of the kind of similar mindsets, because I wanted to grow. I wanted to elevate. I really wanted to know what it felt like to really push myself and not just yeah, I've got a mediocre delivery driver job, and I'm comfortable with that, or I'm a train driver, and that's for me. The 9 to 5 was never the goal. It was always what's in me needs to come out.
Yeah.
So, I know, no offense to anyone that is a delivery driver or a train driver. That's not what I'm saying. It's more about me maximizing my potential.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, man. Let's shift a bit.
Yeah. Go for it.
To therapy.
My favorite topic.
Yeah. And you mentioned a bit already,
Yeah.
so it's a good segue, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you're a trainee psychotherapist.
I am. Yeah.
You're going to be fully trained in 2 years, 1 year.
2 years. 2 years. Yeah. So I'm finishing my level 3, going into my level 4 in September.
Sweet. Yeah. I know you mentioned before we start recording that you already have some clients that you're working with, people that you're working with.
Yeah.
What have been some of the most surprising or important things that you've learned since starting being a therapist?
That everybody's a mirror. Every single person you meet in life is a mirror. And often when you meet that mirror, it's a lesson of things that you need to work on and deal with. Because when I started working with my clients, all of these things were coming up for me. Judgment. I was found myself judging people based on what they were saying. People that were being quite vulnerable and crying, I'm judging them. How could you do that? Like, how could you say that? And it makes you really think about yourself, how you've been conditioned, how you've been domesticated to be a certain way, how your family, that the way that they raised you, although they raised you based on what they knew, that there was more that you could learn. And I've learned in my 3 years of training so far that the most surprising thing for me actually is just how natural it comes to me. So I've been doing this, I've been holding space for my friends all my life without the training. So when I'm learning the skills, they're all like, "You're really good at this, how do you do this?" And I'm like, "Right, just do it." Like, it's just
like a natural,
it's a natural
tendency
thing. Natural tendency. I used to feel like a sore thumb because it'd be like, I think I told you before we started recording, as a black man in a space that is middle class white person, it's like, how dare you? What do you know? Or they would rather, some people, rather even in the black community, rather go to a white therapist than a black one because they feel like you don't have the necessary proficiency. But yeah, that surprised me a lot, I would say. Yeah. Stigma, I guess that's where we're kind of coming from when I say that. It's a stigma of that black people don't really necessarily entertain therapy because there's a few barriers as well.
Yeah, well, I guess ultimately it's like that mirroring thing that you said. Ultimately, I guess a therapist is just like a mirror for someone, and just like a place that creates an environment where someone can see their own stuff through them.
Yeah. Their journey, their story. They are the expert of their own life. And I have to call this out. I really hate, and all therapists will say this, when people go to their therapy session and they come on social media and say, "My therapist said."
Why do you hate that?
Because the role of a therapist is to not say anything. The role of a therapist is to not give advice.
Sure.
You are there on a journey. The questions that you're asking are not questions to probe or to judge. The questions that you're asking are to gain insight. And with that insight, you're supposed to never give any sort of advice. So when it's like, "My therapist told me this, my therapist told me that," I'm like,
This your therapist.
Did they really say that? Or is this kind of like some bias that, a lot of people have that? And I guess when I first started therapy, I was one of those people. My therapist said, but I was interpreting it based on a connection that I felt that they understood because they nodded their head and I'm like, "Yeah, that must be really hard for you, Dwain." I'm like, "Yeah, that was hard for me. My therapist said, Just a bit of therapy joke.
Catchier, I guess. It's just like a marketing thing.
Yeah.
The mirroring thing, again, that stuck with me because my brother is also very similar to you. I think he's in his last year of now of being a trained therapist.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's going to be fully trained soon. Just shout out to my brother as well. But that's what he says that too all the time, the mirroring aspect. And obviously, like, as you said, like with stigmas and everything else that comes into it. But it's like if people could see the pure aspect of what therapy is, which is mirroring. And I guess the therapist will have to be a good therapist too. And if they can actually purify themselves as a mirror and actually just be a mirror as opposed to give advice and blah, blah, blah.
It's really hard though, because sometimes you could be in a therapy session and I'll be honest, like, as a trainee, my limits of proficiency, which means the things that I can't do yet, like sitting with somebody that perhaps has molested a child, I would find that very difficult, very hard, I don't know if I'd be able to, but then I've learned actually I can, because I've learned how to, there's a thing which therapists learn, which is bracketing and putting it on a shelf, which means you are feeling that sense, and instead of allowing it to kind of spill into the session, because that's not them working with the client's needs, it's now about, okay, cool, this thing needs to sit here, and I need to bring this to my supervisor. And that's hard, but I've learned to use that even when talking to people now, where before I'd be reactional. People say stuff like, oh yeah, why are you psychoanalyzing me? And everyone says that once they know that you're a therapist or a trainee therapist. You ask, how are you? You're going to psychoanalyze me? No, I'm not, because there's therapist Dwain, and then there's Dwain that likes to get buck wild, as you know. So it's like, yeah, there's different things that come out of being a trainee therapist. And on my course at the moment, a lot of the people that started from level 1 are not with me in level 3. Because you begin to learn, ooh, I'm not an expert. I can't give my opinion. I'm here to listen, actively listen, be empathic, and never judge that person, because then you're making it unsafe for that person who's paying you money.
Yeah, it's a very intricate thing, like very vulnerable thing, I guess, a space to be in.
Yeah.
What would you say are sort of some things, like how would you think the barrier to therapy could be broken a bit more, so that, you know, it could be more accessible to people? But so you can leave aside this financial part for now, but even just like the perception of it. Because, for example, the culture I was brought up in Iran, therapy, like the way people think of therapy, is like it's reserved for crazy people, and you will look around and almost everyone will need it. You will see people with the weirdest like coping mechanisms and stuff that's just like, how the hell did they turn like that? But then they will make fun of therapy or like they put it away so much. What do you think, like, how could that barrier be?
I think the biggest thing is that media, like movies, the first thing you think of therapy, you think of somebody you're sitting on a chair and someone's got a notepad and pen and writing. That's a psychiatrist,
right?
Who is professionally trained to diagnose the mind and medical. So being a counselor, therapist, I'm in the counselor therapist. I call myself a psychotherapist because I'm learning psychodynamic theory. But I think the biggest way to break down what's happening with how people feel about therapy is information, sharing of information. And that's why I share a lot of different posts around it, because I feel when people can see those like posts, even if it's done in a fun way, it kind of breaks down that barrier bit by bit. It allows someone to be like, oh, actually, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, I can relate to that. And I've done that with my friends, where people, yeah, that makes sense to me. Thank you. I needed to see that today. And I think that's how you can break it down. But I think the biggest thing is from when young people are in school, from primary school, like having spaces. Then they've had to do that a lot more now, because a lot more young people are neurodivergent and need that kind of space. But providing more spaces, especially for parents, to unpack their trauma. Because guess what's going to happen if a parent doesn't unpack their trauma? That child generationally is now going to experience that trauma, whether you like that or not. That's what happens.
Yeah. No, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
It's all about conversation. It's all about change. I feel takes a long time to see the results of it. But what happens if you just do it? Like whatever comes to your mind to encourage somebody, or you have an idea like, oh, your friend might need therapy. Going to someone saying you need to go to therapy, that's gaslighting.
It's quite a harsh thing to say.
It's horrible. And I remember so many, bro, you need to go to therapy, bro. Or why are you going to therapy for? Are you mad? The thing is that it's better to phrase it like this whenever people have asked me how do I tell my boyfriend to go to therapy. And I never tell them how to tell their boyfriend, because then I can see that clearly there's a power play here. But the best way to encourage someone is, have you ever had a conversation with someone about your feelings before? Like, how do you like to talk about your feelings? Do you like to talk about your feelings at all? Gauge that part first. Yeah, sometimes. Have you ever thought about speaking to a therapist? Talk about yourself. I spoke with a therapist, and this is what I got from it. It might prove to be beneficial for you. Because when you give someone an option, you're then basically, or you question someone, it's not leading with assumption, and it's not also leading with judgment.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Yeah, it's a great way of framing that. Yeah, and I think it's an important thing actually, because a lot of people will think someone close to them maybe needs therapy, but then it's just like how to approach that. So I guess like coming at maybe from your own perspective first, or just have you ever talked to someone, like we mentioned a therapist, but just encouraging expression of their feelings first.
Yeah. And actually not all therapists are trained to work with people. It depends on what kind of emotional distress or things that they're processing, because someone could come to me and be like, I don't know, I got psychosis. I can't work with someone with psychosis because that's a high service level. I have to go and train extra to be able to sit with someone with psychosis. But I can work with psychosis. That's a lie. Based on my job, I can. Mm-hmm. The harder things will be like things like BPD and stuff like that. Those are the harder ones to kind of work with. But yeah, I just believe therapy is not a fix-it-all situation. It's not to fix you. It's to allow you to go introspective and inward and sit with the uncomfortable things with someone opposite you that is there making sure that you're safe. So imagine you get into a car. What's the first thing that a driver should say to the passenger?
Put on the seat.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people don't. But the first thing you should do is keep on your seatbelt. That's what a therapist says. Put your seatbelt. Okay, check your mirrors. Okay, move on. That's what a therapist does. Mm. But not telling you what to do at the same time. It's more like guiding you through your own internal world.
Yeah. No, it's a very important thing as well, because the safety aspect of it, because like introspection, a lot of people introspect, like including myself, like, but like by ourselves, like through journaling, stuff like that. But then there's still a limit. Sometimes it's just like fear involved in like how deep you're willing to face yourself. And hard. Yeah, or like maybe there's like some emotions that like you even can't admit to yourself. And maybe if there's someone there like that you know is supporting you, and almost like I'm thinking like when you're like learning how to ride a bike, and when someone puts like that to have like those small wheels, or someone training wheels, someone's holding your bike. Yeah. Or like if you learn how to swim and you have a swimming instructor there with you, then you will learn how to do that better, just because I have this support system.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is, a support system. Essentially, yeah.
So yeah, I can totally see that. What would you say are some important things for finding the right therapist for a person?
So it was very interesting. I started my personal therapy in 2019. I have to be mindful what I say because confidentiality. Mm-hmm. But I met my therapist through a joint organization, meaning there's an organization that I work with, and there's someone else that I know who suggested for me to. It would be good one day you try it. She said, have you ever spoken to someone before? And it was kind of like the same way I phrased it. Mm-hmm. I would say the best way is to really look at what are you trying to unpack? What level of trauma do you feel like you have? Really choose someone who you feel comfortable with in whatever it may be. Skin color, I feel is important. As much as some people will be like, it's not important, it is. I found it difficult at first to have a black woman as a therapist because my ex-wife was black and I had an internal issue with black women at the time. Don't anymore, but I did at the time. So for me, I deliberately went with a black woman because I like to challenge myself in scenarios and really understand why that was. And I realized it had nothing to do with black women. It was, again, another internal thing. But yeah, choose someone who is not going to trigger you, trigger means bringing you back to a place of trauma. It's almost like you're time traveling back into your body.
Yeah.
Choose someone who has the right qualifications. Please look at people's qualifications. Do not believe someone to say I'm a therapist. Ask them where they've trained. What body are they under? Because ethically, you want to make sure that you're kept safe.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people on social media that speak like therapists, but they've got no training. And that's where it's dangerous, because they're just giving their opinion. They're not offering a framework of protection.
Social media therapists, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
there's so many of them, and they get thousands of views. And I watch them and I'm like, wow, this is really bad.
Yeah.
Bad advice. Really bad advice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the sort of rise of social media therapy with you probably heard of it, with the holistic psychologist, let me follow.
Yes.
I saw her like coming up years ago, and now she's so big. But
opioids. A lot of them sell opioids. And they rescue people. And your job as a therapist is not to rescue anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
I thought it was good that, like, at least the increase of therapy content exposed more people to therapy and it being acceptable. But on the other side, I think from the supply and demand and capitalistic side, it also created a lot of people claiming the therapist role when they were just content creators.
Yeah, and that's what people should call themselves, is I'm a content creator.
Yeah, with the niche of therapy.
With a niche of not even holistically talking about therapy. There's nothing wrong with holistically talking about therapy. It's not, but anyone that knows as a therapist, training as one is very difficult to become one.
Yeah.
Because there's so much dogma and tape that you have to go through, and they make it very difficult for you to stay in that field. Because what I'm going through right now is the BACP, which is a British Institution for Psychology and Psychotherapy. Got it right this time.
Nice.
They are changing the way in which they do things. So all the board members left. So now it's under a new body, which is UKC. Don't quote me. UK CABC. Yeah.
Edit it in post.
Yeah. I'm really bad at acronyms. There's all of my different roles, from the hospital to therapy and the schooling system, so much acronyms I have to remember.
Yeah.
But just like even the change of that, it means that anyone that's under the BCP then has to get proficiency and pay to be under that body, so you're protected.
Mm-hmm.
And you're paying for supervision. So I can't sit or therapize a client without a supervisor, because it's not ethical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that costs money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice, man. So last sort of question I have for you. It's a bit of a change, but might be related. What are you most fascinated about right now? And what sort of problems, would you like to see yourself fix in the world?
Wow. What am I fascinated about at the moment? Right now, I'm going to be very honest, I've got a lot of high-risk cases at work. A lot of young people are in crisis, and it breaks my heart just how much the system is broken and there's not enough money or space in the system to be responsive. So there's proactivity a little bit, but social care are they just don't have enough capacity. They're holding too many cases. What would I like to fix in the world? Big, massive thing. World peace? No. I think, just around the element of managing young people's expectations. And my thing is about young people reaching their full potential, maximizing their full potential. And how have I learned to do that is every young person I interact with for the last 5 years of being in this role and managing this service, the one thing that I have seen is that I've never had a young person come back into the hospital as a result of violence. And for me, doesn't just speak for my work, but it speaks for young people, what they need. And actually, generally, the young people that I end up working with go on to encouraging their friends to come off the road or, to reach their potential. I even had a young person who liked music. He wasn't the best at it.
Yeah.
But he must have messaged me like, maybe about 6 months ago. I was like, oh, Dwain, my song's on Spotify. And I just smiled at the phone because it's like, I know where this young person came from.
Yeah.
The fact that they're pushing themselves to reach their potential and to see beyond their fears, their disabilities. It's an amazing thing. Young people just need more opportunities. But yeah, I could speak for days about young people just thriving. That's what it is for me. Young people being able to thrive. Not just black and brown, mainly black and brown, just because that's my context, that's my heart. But I work with anyone. But seeing young people thrive and do well and not being looked down and being blamed for violence on the media, like that too.
Yeah.
Like, let's blame adults, not blame minors for things. You know what I mean? Minors are not responsible for the way that the world is.
It's always a chain, like, of just so many factors.
Yeah, so many different things, man. So many different things, honestly.
No, that's amazing, man. Very admirable.
Thank you, bro.
Very
Appreciate
admirable.
you, man.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. And anytime you want to chop it up, you know, I'm down, man. Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to say before we finish? Any conclusive remarks or anything you want to let people know?
I just think anyone that wants to know what I'm about or wants to follow me, you can go to my TikTok, which I believe is These Thoughts, which is DEEZ and Thoughts. But if it's wrong,
I can put it.
Yeah, put it up. Because I've got so many like
Instagram handles. Anything else?
No, my Instagram's private.
Okay.
But my TikTok is something that's open that people can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm doing on TikTok at the moment is called From My Window. So I'm literally every morning I wake up, or 3 times a week, I just speak about what I feel and I share it. And yeah, you're welcome to join that space anytime. It's a safe space.
I would love to. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, man. It's been great.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And till next time.